Welcome to Straight Conversation here with Jesse and GD as Gualano as I call him, but GD as I call him. Sorry we late. We had to get the technical difficulties down, and we had to get the different systems down and all of that. But now we're here at you on Straight Conversation, and like I say, I'm welcomed by I'm joined by one of my main dudes, GD. Hey, how's it going, GD? How's everything going?
Hey, everything's going well, Jesse. I first want to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be on your show. This is the first time I've ever been on Straight Conversation. So I know if it's coming from Jesse Evans, it's definitely going to be straight conversation. But I'm happy to be here, interested in hearing what your listeners have to say out there. I know you have a very diverse crowd and audience out there. So I'm looking forward to a great night tonight there, Jesse Evans.
Thank you. And I try to be diverse. I try to, my goal is to listen to everybody. You don't have to agree with everybody, but I like to know not only what people think, but like why. Like people, like again, people talk about like, we live in different Americas, like one or two, but I think it's like, I mean, with 300 million people, it's like 100,000 different Americas. It depends on where you grew up, where you live now, and your education level, your economics, financial situation, and all of that put together makes, America so unique depending on, like even if you grew up in like a rich community, you're going to be different than the next rich person that grew up in a different rich community. Just like if you grew up in a hood, you're going to be different from another person who grew up in a different hood, because there's so many things that go to make us who we are in this country, and we're just so different and diverse. And it'd be, America would be an interesting country if we can accept diversity. It becomes so hard to just accept that people are going to be different. Like just realizing like everybody's not going to think the way you think. Everybody's not going to think the way I think. And I try to realize that. And that's why I think I have so many different friends and I have so many people with different backgrounds. And like, you know, I can't expect, even people be like, man, like that Jesse, how is your friends with that person? Or this person, like everybody don't know or is conscious as you need them to be, especially if they never had to think about stuff like that. And it's just interesting like that. But yeah, so man, we here to talk about you and learn about you. And you're living in Washington D.C. now, right?
That's correct. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area here. Work for the federal government. So most of my comments will be my comments and my comments only. But I try to stay active in and involved in what goes on in our society, our community, because I think it's so important to give back, to be accountable, and hold folks accountable. And that's why I'm here. Uh, and yeah, so the DMV area, as they call it, DC, Maryland, Virginia, the political beltway, DC. So we get all the good politics from the January 6th insurgent to everything else. So yeah, I'm right here.
And man, and you come from like the same community I come from. You grew up. I mean, you grew up in Chicago. And before we get started, because of your background and because of what you currently do and stuff like that, there may be topics that come up that you just don't want to comment on and just be like, just let me know because I know there's certain things that you just cannot like give your opinion on, especially on an open show that could be misconstrued or taken out of context or anything like that. So just let me just let me know. We just keep it moving. But you grew up in Chicago, man, and Chicago going to be a lot. Is Chicago that much different than Washington? Like, how did you get from Chicago to Washington?
Well, I got from that's a great question there, Jesse. So I like to say that I am from the South Side of Chicago. Very proud of that. One of the fun facts that I always share with people is that I was a classmate in eighth grade in grammar school with Michelle Obama. We went to Bremer Elementary School, which is right now Boucher Elementary School, and it's on the south side of Chicago. But yes, I was a classmate with Michelle Obama in elementary school. And as you know, south side of Chicago is definitely a very challenging place to grow up, but definitely made the man that I am now. And how did I wind up here? Was through the military because I did 20 years in the Army and retired out of the military, combat veteran. And I like to tell folks that I've been in 2 wars, Desert Storm and the concrete jungles of Chicago. So if you can survive
Which
all
one was
that,
scarier? Which one was scarier?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, so
I said, which one was scarier? Which one was scarier for you?
which one was scarier? I would say the concrete jungles of Chicago, you know. So that was definitely a challenge, but we survived with the blessings of God and you know, good people. And so through my travels of military and academia, it led me to this area here that I'm in now, which is DMV, Washington, D.C. So I had many travels, academia, college, football, um, federal government, politics, you name it, combat, Army. I've pretty much been fortunate and blessed to be involved and met a lot of people and had a lot of different experiences. So I'm glad to be here, Jesse.
And while we talk about the military, we lost like a great person this year, Colin Powell. And you've been in the military, you've been in the federal government, you've been in Washington. You know, did Colin like I know me personally, Colin Powell was like, he always been a hero in my community, and like before there was Barack Obama on a national scale, there was Colin Powell who has been on a national scale as long as like I can remember. I was born in '77, so when I was growing up, I mean, Colin Powell has always been a great figure. He's always been a family man. He always been a community person. He was a person that you always point to as a role model. I mean, like, how did Colin Powell have any, influence on you, or do you have any experience with, what did Colin Powell mean in your world?
Colin Powell meant a lot to me. Other than my father, Colin Powell was arguably one of the biggest mentors in my career. He was a military man just like me. He was my overall commander during Desert Storm. He was also into politics like me. He was also in the federal government like me. So, from that perspective of military, federal government, and politics, he touched on a lot of things that impact our country. And not only that, he was a leader, and he was a true leader. He understood men, he understood women, from the military to academia to politics. And that meant a lot to me, even civil servants. I also had the opportunity to meet his son and know his son because his son, Michael Powell, was a College of Women Mary alumni. And so when I was teaching at the College of Women Mary, I had the opportunity to meet his son. So yes, Colin Powell was definitely a leader who was a statesman of our country, who when he spoke, people listened. And when he spoke, he always had the words of wisdom. So I had the utmost respect for Colin Powell, and he's definitely a leader that would be truly missed in our country.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with everything you said. I mean, Colin Powell, like I say, he was always someone in our community that was looked at as a role model, until the day he passed. I mean, always, as long as I can remember, he was a fixture in all of our communities. Also, we probably a few years apart, but did we happen to play for the same coach? Uh, did you play for Coach Johnson?
That is correct. You know, you and I had the fortunate opportunity to play high school football for the same coach, but at different high schools. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, I had the opportunity to play football for the Hall of Fame coach and arguably one of the best high school football coach slash track coaches in the
Yeah,
city.
don't leave on track.
Yeah, yes. Because South Shore High School in 80, 81, we took state.
Oh,
Our
wow.
girls ran against Jackie Joyner in East St. Louis Lincoln and beat them to be state champions So yeah, Glenn Johnson, rest in peace. He's now deceased. Was my high school football coach from what 70, 79, I think. Yeah, 79, 80, 80, 81. And then I think a couple of years after that, he went on to your high school at Dunbar and continued to be successful. When he was my coach at South Shore High School, in my senior year, we had the opportunity from a football perspective to play at Soldier Field in the semifinal game. We lost to Julian, unfortunately, but that was just the type of coach Johnson was. He continued on to impress, and not only impress, but be a mentor for so many men and women in the city of Chicago on the South Side, from Carver High School to South Shore High School to Dunbar High School to even, I think he had a short stint at CBS High School. This guy was truly not only a coach, but a father figure that developed and led so many young men and women who are now older and adults now. So, yes, you and I had the same high school football coach.
Shannon said Coach Johnson left South Shore in '98, but he might be '88 because Coach Johnson was my football when I went to high school, all the way through. Well, I went to high school in '91. So he was there. I graduated in '95, and he was at Dunbar before I got to Dunbar. And I know he won a couple city championships at Dunbar. And like you say, I mean, Coach Johnson was one of the 1188. That's what Shannon said. But
Well, I
when
think
you
Shannon was the athletic trainer back at South Shore, so you probably are
Shannon
pretty good
Washington,
with the dates there. So he probably knows.
yeah, but Coach Johnson, as you say, was like a father figure to everybody on the team because, of course, in our community we grew up, it wasn't really a lot of fathers, wasn't a lot of positive male role models, and he was there, one of the most influential people in my life, one of the most, high school he stayed on, whether I
Yes.
played football or not. He made me run track, which I hated. I was pretty good at when we were in football, like running you had to run a couple laps around the field. I was pretty good at doing that compared to the other football players. So he was like, Jesse, you're going to run a 2 mile and a 3 mile in track. I'm like, I don't want to run track. He was like, yes, you do. I'll see you at practice. I'm like, I don't want to run track. He was like, I'll see you at practice, and just
Hey
walked off.
Jesse, I'll tell you this, and this is a true story, and I'm not saying it because I'm on your show here, but a true story. After your football years of playing football, Jesse, I understood from Coach Johnson himself that you also assisted in the coaching, and you were arguably one of the most people that Coach Johnson talked about when it came to mathematical formulas, when it came to breaking down defenses and breaking down offenses. And so Coach Johnson told me the story. He said, yeah, I know that Jesse Evans. He played football for me, and not only did he play football for me, he helped me coach and figure out the defensive schemes and offensive schemes with his mathematical some stuff he was doing. I won't curse. I won't curse on your show, but yeah, he really spoke highly of you. I guess you cracked the code on the different sequences and tendencies of other teams, and he really appreciated that, which helped Dunbar to be able to scheme up their offenses and defenses in your coaching days there, Jesse Evans.
I did coach my junior and senior year. It was funny because I went to a program called Upward Bound, so I couldn't really practice during the summer because I had to go to classes during the summer. And at first he didn't know that. He's like, dude, you're going to play football or what you going to do? And I'm like, well, I'm going to have to do the school part. And, and he's like, I was hoping you said that. And I think he kept me around because he wanted me to be around a football team and not get in trouble. He just wanted to keep me on his wings. So he was like, hey, Jesse, go sit in the box with Coach Smitty and write down this and that. It was funny because I used to take it to him and he'd be like, all right, sure, whatever, cool, thanks, and I'm like, okay, whatever. And then one game we were actually losing, and I had gave it a paper. He's like, get it out of my face. I'm like, oh! And then, by the time his halftime speech was over, he was like, wait, let me see that again. And then he started looking at me, and he actually did change the game plan based on some of the stuff that I said they were doing it, their tendencies. And he was like, wow, let's try this. And they actually tried it, and it worked. And of course, Coach Johnson was a great coach, so he probably would have did the same thing when I was there or not. But he wanted to keep people he wanted to keep kids involved. He wanted to keep kids on his circle of influence, especially good kids. And he didn't want me getting in trouble or anything like that. So he figured out a way to keep me close to the team. Although, I probably did help a little bit, but he probably helped me help, but he was a great coach and a great man. And now, we start to see you know, and I try to carry that same thing on when I do. I coach youth football. I try to help out kids and stuff like that. Like people talk about lack of influence in our communities. Do you see it as a difference with less people helping, more people helping? Do you think there's just a disconnect between our generation and the previous generation? Do you think because to me people are still helping, people are still volunteering, people are still trying to okay, I knocked that over, but people are still trying to help kids and help people in our community and things like that. And we may even have more people that's actually helping. But there's obviously a disconnect between us and the youth. I tend to say with the crack era that hurt our community, we lost the whole. Do you see a disconnect between us and the youth? And how do you think our youth is impacted by the adults today?
I think that's a great question, Jesse. Not only athletically with our young kids and our young people, but academically, socially, economically, we've been impacted because our culture has changed. And with our culture changing in our communities, specifically the urban communities with our young blacks, our kids change. In your day, my day, when it came to sports, academics, etc., we were more hands-on. We were more outdoors, playing football, participating in softball, uh, and things of that nature. But now, with the new technology and the hand games and video games, our kids are not outside as much as they used to be doing the hands-on type sports. With the fact that our culture has changed so much, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad, we're not involved in the sports programs with our kids as much. I know when I was a kid, speaking of sports, we had organized rec ball, which was Little League up at Rosenblum Park, which is on the south side of Chicago. And when we were over there, we had baseball at Rosenblum Park. But now, if you fast forward to today, you don't have as much organized baseball on the south side of Chicago for young kids, other than, I guess, Jackie Robinson and a couple of other organizations. But back then, we had a lot of organizations. So I guess in closing, most of the programs that we had for kids back in the 70s, 80s, and up into the 90s are not as many, at least from what I'm seeing in the different urban communities, whether they be DC, Atlanta, and other places that are not there, Jesse. So what do you see? What do you see out there in Madison? I know you have been very, very involved in youth football in developing young kids, but do you see a lot of that in Madison?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold because it's here to see whoever got the biggest microphone seems to be the loudest. While we see a lot of kids in our community that are not doing a lot of positive things, we tend to overlook how many kids are doing positive things. How many people are how many kids are now going to college, how many kids are now getting scholarships, and not just for athletics, but academics. Every year I'm reading okay, this young black child, whether male or female, has took this spelling bee down or did this or became a chess champion. And, we tend to overlook that because the people that's doing the destructive things are so much louder than and overshadow the positive things that our youth are doing. So we have like because of social media, because of 24-hour a day news, we're constantly hearing about the bad things. And there's a lot of bad things, but the thing is like I'm not sure if there's more kids doing more bad things or because of social media, if it's just more amplified. Because when we were growing up, half the kids did good, half the kids ran gangs and shot at each other and sold drugs and stuff like that. They wasn't putting their drugs on social media. They didn't have like people always reporting this where I could get instant news in Atlanta, I can get instant news in California. Only thing we knew was our four corners, our circle, our 8 block radius. And that's all we knew. We didn't know that things was going on in Atlanta. We didn't know Baton Rouge was like just as bad as Chicago. We didn't know Jacksonville had a hood, we just thought what we had in our circle. And what we see now, I think, is that kids are, a lot of kids coming from broken homes, coming from homes where they may not be as loved or not get as much attention, are still doing bad things. But there's so many kids that's like doing the academics, doing the sports, still excelling. And, it's like, like I say, it's just being overshadowed because I think because of social media, it just makes everything either really, really positive or everything really, really bad. We bring up like flash mobs. 100 kids to run downtown Chicago and just instantly get down there. Are they like getting rides down there? Are they? I mean, because we live on the south side, I'm sure they're not like robbing people and jumping on a bus, right? Like waiting at the bus stop. They're not like 100 kids waiting at the bus stop, and they don't live around the corner from the Gold Coast. They live all the way on the south side. So how are they transporting? I know when I lived in Chicago, we didn't have cars. And I'm sure a lot of the kids that's robbing these stores don't have cars. So how do we deal with stuff like flash mobs? How do we deal with like the fact that youth are getting into like I always say like when you have people talk about like whether a teenager is bad or not. It is like to me, there's two types of like bad teenagers. There's the teenager that does teenage stuff, bad stuff, maybe skip school, maybe sneak and smoke reefer or something, maybe, hang out with boys where they shouldn't be, things like that. And we're like, okay, that's a bad teenager. Versus like doing adult criminal behavior, where you may go to jail. And I think, trying to find a balance on how do we respond to that from the police, from the community, from the parents, from the teachers. How would you deal with flash mobs today?
Well, it kind of goes back to my original point that initiated this conversation about the different type of sports programs that we used to have in our communities that kept our young people active, kept our young people doing something constructive within their communities, whether it be, the YMCA programs, Boys and Girls programs, baseball at Rosenblum Park on the south side of Chicago, a lot of sports programs that were involved. Not that they're not today, but it was not like it used to be. So back to your question, you fast forward to now, today, flash mob. That is something that our communities really need to deal with, especially the adults. And it goes to accountability. In our communities, urban communities, when it comes to accountability, we definitely hold the police force accountable for their actions. But when it comes to our kids in our communities, we have to hold them accountable. Because this flash mob, I don't know where this came from. It sounds like something out of a movie, Jesse. I mean, how can 10 or 15 kids or teenagers organize and come together and say, hey, Jesse, meet me downtown on the Gold Coast or the Magnificent Mile, downtown Chicago, Illinois, and we're going to hit which store? We're going to hit that store at this certain time to take this certain merchandise. It sounds like something more organized is going on But the mindset of a 17, 16-year-old kid wanting to do that is just like amazing, you know. And then what do they do with the merchandise when they get it? And then how do they know when to meet, when to go, what time to do? It's just crazy, as well as unfortunate because it's going on. Is you know, the state of Minnesota, California, Chicago, all across the country, to the fact where the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, Jesse, is speaking to this, that this is becoming a problem. So it's the problem because of the pandemic where we've been locked down, and psychologically, young people are just so trapped in their mindset or whatever, where they're letting out these certain type of bad actions, or is it because they need money and they have no job and inflation is going up? I don't know, Jesse, but what I do know, to your point, this flash mob type of crime is going on, whether it be flash mob, whether it be carjacking. I mean, we're talking about 16, 17-year-old kids that will
13?
snatch you out your car and
Hey,
carjack you.
didn't a 13-year-old jack somebody in Washington last year?
Yes, that was right
A
down the
girl,
street
a
from me.
13-year-old girl.
That was right down the street from me in DC. I couldn't believe it. 13
Yeah,
years old.
a 13 and a 15-year-old girl, and he died.
Incredible. Who does that at
They
13 and
caught
15
they
years
caught a
old?
train to go downtown to carjack somebody. 13 and a 15-year-old girl.
Who wakes up and says, my mindset is I'm going to go downtown at 13 years old and get me a car? Incredible. So where does that come from, Jesse? I mean, how does that develop in one's mind? Is it because of the pandemic? Is it because of being culturally conditioned where we see so many things on TV and the media and all these things play in our mind as young kids, and we see adults do this and then we try to replicate what we see or what we hear on TV? How does this happen, Jesse?
I think personally, I think what it is it's strictly social media. Social media may be the greatest invention that connected people in the world, but it's also the worst invention that connected people in the world. And the thing is, I was reading today that after the Michigan, like in Madison and the surrounding areas, a lot of schools are sending out letters to parents and letters to the sheriffs that they have a new TikTok challenge. The TikTok challenge is call in bombs, threats, call in gun scares at school, call in all this stuff. And this is a TikTok challenge, and it's like, again, somebody mentioned it on TikTok, let's do this challenge. And now all the kids who got TikTok are either they're gonna do something like this or they're not. And the thing is that there's a lot of like, even if you have the thing is like people talk about like how bad kids are or like black people with black people that, and I'm like, but what we have to realize is like 90% of the kids are probably not even into this. It's the 10% that's into it that's extreme, you know, because kids see that and they're like, I'm not gonna call that a bomb threat, but all you need is one or two bomb threats to be called in. Hey, we got a call. Let's take this call.
Okay.
Uh, it's gonna be it's gonna be my first time taking a call, so we'll see if we can connect it. Hey, thanks for calling Straight Conversation. You're on with Jesse and GD. Who are we talking to?
You are speaking with, and I'm going to let you recognize that voice.
Cash.
On your face. Yes. So, with that being said, Jesse, and
Can you hear
how you
GD?
doing, young man?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. So you're speaking about the kids organizing to go down on the Gold Coast and terrorize. They are organizing. They gather by Texas. They do the time and the place. It's a lot of them. And among the youth, it's so out of order. They're running wild. They just had an 11-year-old boy, they called him carjacking, and he was caught. Come to find out, it wasn't his first offense. They also had five youth, and 4 boys and 1 girl. And they interviewed the girl on TV. And she told
Jesse?
them she said she liked doing it. Now I said, why do you do it? She said, I don't want to hurt nobody, but I like doing it. So that goes to show you where our youth is and hold people accountable. It's a very powerful word that we don't like that word. We don't like accountability and
Jesse?
we don't like
Yep.
respect and
Can you hear?
responsibility. Those words we dodge, and you got to hold people accountable, and everything starts with the parents. And although you don't know what your kids doing when they're not home, but when they bring the merchandise home and you accept it and you don't question them, you're just as guilty. Accessory to thievery.
Hey,
Okay,
yeah, and
I'm watching you guys. So.
we appreciate that. Hey, thanks, Cash.
Okay.
All right. So that was Cash calling in, and he was saying, you still there, GD? I may have lost GD too. But that was Cash calling in, and he was talking about how these kids are organizing and things like that. And I agree, the kids are organizing, but they have to be selling the stuff somewhere. They're not taking it to pawn shops. They're not taking, and they got to know who to sell it to. So I'm guessing that they are bringing it. They are bringing this stuff in. I think it's a larger organization that's using kids because they know kids won't get in as much trouble. So I think it's a larger organization that's bringing these kids in, and then telling the kids like, hey, you guys go, you take all this jewelry, you bring it to us, because a lot of this stuff is showing up online. A lot of this stuff is being resold online. So obviously the people who are bringing this stuff in are really, bringing this stuff in is really taking it to some central location. And I think it's back in the day when adults used to try to get kids to do their dirty work. Like, hey, let's just say because they knew like the kids wouldn't get into as much trouble as adults would doing the same crime. So, hey, Judy, if I lost you, just but I'll keep it going. But they knew like back in the day, like, hey, if you take this murder, if you sell these drugs, if you get caught doing this, if you admit that you did that, then you're not going to get into as much trouble than if I get into it. And I think these people know, like, hey, if you go hit this jewelry store, y'all bring the jewelry back to me. I'll pay you guys cash for it, and then I'll sell it. I'll fix it. I'll do all that. Are you back, Jimmy? Can you hear? All right, I think I lost GD completely. He's probably going to disconnect and come back in. But the problem with the flash mobs is that we always talk about like parents should be accountable. Parents should know where their kids at. Parents should like. There's absolutely, Let's see if we can get GD back. Hey, can you hear me, GD?
I got you.
Okay, and I was just saying, like, when we dealing with stuff like flash mobs, it's easy to like say parents should be more accountable. Parents should know where their kids at. Parents should do this. The community should do that. I mean, we eventually have to be honest with ourselves. Parents that kids are doing this do not care or they can't stop them. So us saying parents do this, the kids that's already doing it, their parents probably already know. They can't do anything about it or don't care. The community should be doing this. The community have outreach programs. The community have where we try to get kids to do good things. It hasn't stopped them. I mean, so the community can't do anything. I like the point that you brought up when you said, someone said they missed you while you was gone, GD. Someone said they missed you while you were gone. But like, we didn't miss you while you were gone. They didn't miss you while you was gone. But, like, it's easy to say the community should do this. It's easy to say parents should do that because it's not going to change anything. You can't save a community.
Who said it was easier for the community to do something?
Well, I didn't say it was easier. I'm saying it's easy for people to say, how do we fix this? Well, the community needs to step up. Well, parents need to step up. Well, the police need to step up. I don't think any of those options is going to stop what we see today. There's absolutely nothing you can do.
Jesse, where's the accountability? I think one of the biggest adjectives or buzzwords that I use is accountability. When will the parents be held accountable as well as that child who does X, Y, or Z? I mean, I think there needs to be more accountability of the child themselves as well as the parent themselves. It's the same accountability we hold when we have bad police officers or we have bad judges or bad politicians. We hold them accountable. We protest, oh, the police is bad, defund the police, etc. Okay. But then when it comes to ourselves doing something like flash mobs, we say, oh, well, no, 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 we you can't do this, you can't do that. And I disagree. Accountability is across the board. What are your thoughts there, Jesse?
Well, this is the thing is that when we talk about accountability, when we say we ourselves doing it, 90 to 95% of the people are not doing it at all. So it's like when you say, so for example, the flash mobs, right? So a 14-year-old go do a flash mob. What do you suppose should happen to him and his parents? Should the child go to jail and spend time in jail like an adult, or should you say he's 14 and he should be in school and send him back to school? Should the parents get arrested for what their children did, whether they knew about it, whether they was around, whether not? I mean, how do you enforce accountability? I guess is my question. Like, how do you enforce it? Do you put the parents in jail for robbery? And how long do you put them in jail? Do you put the kids in jail for robbery? And how long do you put a 14 or a 13-year-old, 14-year-old in jail and out of school?
Well, first of all, you're throwing out numbers. You say 90, 95%. I'm not sure if you can support your numbers that it's only a small portion that's doing it. But even if it's a small portion that's doing
it's a very small portion that's doing it. You got to think, so if 25 kids go and do a flash mob, there's 3 million kids in a given city. Like, I mean, it's such a small group.
But let me say this. To impact our society, Jesse, all it takes is one person. All it takes is a Rettenhausen out of with the shooting that he did. All it takes is the cop that killed George Floyd, which is one person. All it takes is that one person that shot the kid in Georgia. Okay. All it takes is that little kid in the high school that shot up the high school about a week ago. So we can't just dismiss. It's just a small group of people.
Here's a good question for that.
Impacting the country, Jesse, where you got the Speaker of the House. I wouldn't care if it's 15 people. You got the Speaker of the House speaking about it. So then they get hung up on it. Oh, it's just 20 people. It's not.
Wait, but here's my point. Here's my point. Okay, so the 15-year-old in Michigan, right? He's going to be charged with murder. He's going to go to jail for life. His parents are going to be charged. If they're found guilty, they're going to go to jail for life, right?
Yeah.
So yes, my question comes is, do you think that's going to stop school shootings, or is it just going to continue at the same rate? We had 31 school shootings so far this year in the U.S. So it's like, I mean, it doesn't
you recognize my point that one person is makes an impact. So we can't get hung up on if it's one or if it's 25.
Well, I don't think one person makes an impact.
Impacting America when that one kid and his parents is impacting America. Now, I just wanted to put that.
I just don't know that it's impacting America.
You keep trying to digress from that. You don't want to recognize that it doesn't take 50% of America to be doing something to impact America. That one.
I agree with that. I agree with that. I agree with you.
But to your question is a good question. And I say, yes, those parents need to be held accountable. Will it stop all crime? No, there's not a law or policy that will stop everything. It's all about.
But it's not going to stop flash mobs, is what I'm saying.
When you start holding people accountable, it'd be a discouragement to other kids doing it. It won't probably stop, but it'd definitely be a discouragement where parents are being held accountable. I'm not saying go to jail or things of that nature. I don't even know what it is right now that they should be held accountable for. That's
really my question. That's really, I understand the accountability part, but I'm like, how do we hold people accountable is my question.
Well, it depends on what time of the day was it done. Where if the crime was done at, let's say, at lunchtime or 1 o'clock during the day, and these kids are supposed to be in high school, then There could be accountability from the parent. There could be accountability from the school. There could be accountability from a lot of people, to include their kid. And when I say accountability, the accountability does not need to come with punishment, but the accountability needs to come with some type of standards or policy. And that's what I mean of being accountable. I can't give you a silver bullet of what needs to happen. What I am saying, what needs to happen right now is accountability. And through accountability, hopefully we'll drive policy, hopefully we'll drive ordinance in these different cities and help discourage these young people of doing this type of crime. I do not want to see a young person's life destroyed for the rest of their life. I don't want to see a hard sentence or a crime. However, there needs to be something else that is used to discourage, whether there's community service, it could be, I don't know, cleaning up the school, but it needs to be something in policy or in ordinance to discourage these kids of doing what they're doing.
And you know what? I agree, and I want accountability. I do. I think if you're talking about punishment accountability, I'm good with that. If you're talking about putting people in jail, I'm good with that. I was just curious as to like how do we make that balance where it can have an impact? Because I don't want to like punish people just to punish people, and it does not
I'm
have
not
any
about
impact.
that.
Because things start to get so out of whack. But I mean, like if we could come up with a way where, hey, I'm definitely good for people being accountable for their kids. I have no issue with that. If your child steals my car and the cops lock both of y'all up, I'm good with that. I mean, I have no problem with it. But I'm saying we always like in this country we make so many rules and so many laws, and but when we carry it out, it tend to impact one group of people way more than it impact another group of people. So trying to find the right balance, and it's funny because me and you've been having conversations and debates and talks, and I think we at the end of the day we have the same goalposts, but it's like a football game. It's like, do you still want to get to the same place, and you always tease me about being a progressive or a Bernie Sanders and stuff like that. And I don't tease you about being a right wing nut because you're not. I think you're just moderate.
Moderate.
You're moderate, and you're just maybe a little right of center, or you could be left of center depending on the issues. No, you're more right. You're more right to center, but slightly. You're more of Colin Powell. So I would say so we have these discussions, we have these talks, and it's funny that you have these talks with so many people, and it's when we talk, it's funny because our politics are so different, but we don't tend to disagree on a lot of things, which is funny. We tend to want to end up in the same place. It's just about the road that we choose to get there, which I think is why we connect so well, why we, understand each other so well. It's very interesting, and that's why I always talk about talking to people and not trying to argue with them or debate with them, but trying to understand why they think the way they think, and you grew up in Chicago, you found your way in Washington, D.C., through the roads that you traveled. I grew up in Chicago. I found my way to Madison, which is a lot different than Washington, D.C. I mean, people always and Madison is really, really trying to be more progressive. And before couples were same-sex couples were allowed to marry, Madison had rules where they could be on each other's health insurance, if you're living together, stuff like that. When Madison tries to be progressive, they protect atheists up here as a protective class. But it's just a really progressive community. So, of course, both of us coming from Chicago, we see a lot of the same things. We have a lot of the same experience, but our current day social issues, political views are different. But to be fair, we tend to agree a lot, which I find is interesting. What do you think? Although,
I would.
except for Bernie, we totally disagree on Bernie. Bernie's the man. But anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, I definitely don't agree with Bernie. 1969 Woodstock type guy, whatever the case may be. As a matter of fact, and I would also say progressives have taken us too far to the left. And I think, we had a little sidebar conversation, you and I, whereas probably 6 years ago, the right and conservatives, the Tea Party specifically during the Barack Obama years, took us so far to the right where the progressives and Bernie and J.C. Evans tried to take us all the way back to the left. But I think they overshot that, in your words, and went too far to the left. And now we're to a point politically, socially, economically where we are, rolling out the red carpet to Afghanistan, people who we were just fighting about, last year, and we're rolling out the carpet and we're talking about,
well, we wasn't fighting. We wasn't fighting the citizens of Afghanistan. We was fighting the Taliban.
The Taliban is a citizen that became a soldier. So,
So, this is an important question to me. As black men in America, how different could your politics be? And what people don't understand is like we're in 2021, right? And black people are not monolithic. Like you're gonna think different than I think. You're gonna have different. I mean, we talk about a racist institution. We all understand that, but we also have other issues that may be in your sphere of problems for you in your sphere of the world, which may not even be a problem for me in my sphere of the world, just like, and vice versa. Things I deal with in Madison may be totally different than what you deal with in Washington, D.C. So things that's going to be more important to you may be a little different on a scale of what's important to me living in Madison. And like people act like because we're both black, we have to think like walk in the same step. And it's just not the case. Like some black people are highly educated, highly financially stable, is not going to think the same as somebody that's not highly educated or not financially stable. Like just because they're black don't mean they share the same experiences. Somebody that lives in Georgia is going to think different than somebody that lives in Chicago. I always think like, how could black people live in Louisiana? The people in Louisiana is like it's such a different world depending on where you at and your experiences and how you got there. And that's why we talked about like how you got to where you were, because even if you ended up in Washington, D.C., somebody that didn't play sports, somebody that maybe was on a different academic path, he was in band and chess, and they went to school to be a doctor, is going to think different than you who went to the military and seen the world. Even if you guys are both black and ended up in Washington, D.C., like we think just like every other group of people, people think all Latinos think alike. There's conservative Latinos, there's liberal Latinos, like everybody, we share things in common, but there's a lot that we think different about. And it's just based on our experience, I believe.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I agree with it, but I disagree with it. I agree with what you're saying. There's a difference between your culture, your mindset, my culture, my mindset when it comes to social economics and politics, etc.
Well, not culture.
Okay,
mindset.
Yeah, but I still disagree because
right.
when what happens in Madison and at the local level is so important to not only Madison and Wisconsin, but the entire state. And this is where Democrats are losing the battle when it comes to politics, is because some folks think like Jesse Evans that, oh, you're different, I'm different, we're all different, we all should get along, just that and that. This inclusiveness is too much. And that's where progressives and I disagree. It's just too much.
Why is it too much? You don't like the kumbaya of progressives?
It ain't about kumbaya. It's about when there are certain bills that come to certain people, they are all about their people. When it comes to casinos in Arizona and other places, Native Americans, I don't see a lot of diversity at casinos when it comes to Native Americans. When it comes to Chinatown in DC, Chicago, and other places, especially when I came to your town in Madison and ordered some shrimp fried rice. Those folks, they are about their culture, their food. My point is this: uh, even though you think different and have different views that are different from me, the bottom line is a lot what happens in Wisconsin impacts America, especially when y'all have Governor Scott and all the things that happen there. We have to start thinking like that because the bottom line, you talked about Georgia. Yeah, Georgia, what happens in Georgia is different than or Wisconsin, but guess what? What the common denominator is voting rights. Okay, that's the common denominator. So even though it's in Georgia, it's impacting the entire country when it comes to voting
Well,
rights.
of course, but that's anything. But what I'm saying is, okay, here's a good example, right? Georgia. Georgia with their voting rights bill, right? So people in Georgia, people in the South are going to be like, as a black man, one of my main focus is like focusing on having the right to vote, being able to vote freely, being able to have access to ballots. Would you agree with that? If you live in
Yes.
California, that's not your one of your focuses. If you're a black person in California, you're not worried about being stripped of your right to vote. I mean, you're not. That's just not one of the things that's high up on your priority list as what's impacting you in California. Maybe if you're in California, maybe you're more impacted by businesses leaving California to go to Texas, or maybe you're more impacted by homelessness. Like there might be different issues where that takes your attention away. Like one of the main things in Wisconsin, right, is like one of the main things in Wisconsin, one of the main things in Madison is like we have the highest incarceration rate in the country between black men and white men, the highest gap. That's a main concern for the people here in Madison or for the black people here in Madison, because that's something that directly impacts us locally. Whereas if you're in Washington, D.C., you're not thinking about how does the incarceration rate living in you're not thinking about what I'm thinking about the incarceration rate of blacks versus whites here, because you have what I'm saying is although there are some universal issues that we have to share, there's also a lot of issues that's only locally or state to state, and those things may raise up above and those things may raise up like some of the things that impact me directly living locally and to my state may not be some of the things that's high up on your list that impact you living in Washington, you, you know, uh, living in your state. Like some of the impact. So I just think although we have some universal things that we as black people have to, work toward, there's also a lot of things that black people have that's different.
You
My
you you
issues are not just so wealthy black Americans are not focused on how to pay their light bills. They're not focused on the poverty that's impacting their community. They're not focused on how do I need to volunteer and work and help my family and give back to the community with my time. Because in their community, it's an afterthought. Will Smith is not saying I gotta go coach the local football team because there's nobody else that has to do this, or want to do this. Jesse Evans living in a certain community, I have to do that because if I don't, nobody else will. If Will Smith don't do that, there's 100 people ready to take his place and do that. So to say that Will Smith have to focus on the same things I focus on, to me, it's just not fair. Me living in a certain community, I have to worry about certain things. You living in a certain community, you have to worry about a different set of issues. Not saying that they don't cross patterns, but Wisconsin is not Washington, D.C. You guys have there's a lot of people that black people could go successfully get to Washington, D.C., go to Atlanta, places like that, and excel, whereas coming to Madison is just not as easy.
It's very obvious that you have not been in Washington D.C. before. Why? And so
Okay,
Washington D.C.
I was making a broader point, but yeah, I get it.
Washington, D.C. is definitely considered as the chocolate city. The southeast side of Washington, D.C. is just like the south side of Chicago
Yeah, and
and
I
like
believe it.
any urban community in our country. So, contrary to what you see on television, CNN, and all the other things about DC, DC is just as rough and go through some
Oh
of the
no,
same
no, I
problems of
100%. I know
some
that.
of the same problems of incarceration and things of that nature that you're talking about. So, Madison, Wisconsin is not the only city that is going through incarceration, but what connects
What I
us?
said, wait, but you're missing my point. I'm saying that the gap is so large in Madison that that's one of the things that we're constantly talking about all the time at
But but
meetings.
but what I'm talking about is the way you fix incarceration are several ways. But going back to my point, voting is one. So you say, "Oh, well, down there in, in Georgia, they talking about a different thing about voting." Voting is so powerful, Jesse, and you got to understand that at the local level, throughout all of our cities, especially those in urban communities, voting and some of the things that are going on in Georgia voting pertains to black folks. Voting in Madison pertains to black folks because if you don't have the right judges and the lawyers in position to help that incarceration of black folks in Madison, you're going to have problems. Same thing in the city of Chicago right now. The food fight is over the mapping because of the 10-year census report. Now you have the Latino community and politicians are trying to get more wards over the black wards in the city of Chicago. Why? Because of power, because of voting. Okay, it's so important. In the city of New York, I think today or yesterday, they voted, the city council in the city of New York voted about 31 to 14 saying, we want to allow non-citizens to vote
Yes,
because the Democrat Party and the liberals are losing faith in the black vote. They say black
but
folks
but
don't vote enough,
again,
and
again,
but
again, that's
I'm
a good
trying
point.
to if you give me an opportunity to complete my thoughts, I'm trying to show you
Yes,
the
you have all
importance
the
of the
opportunity.
vote at every local level in every city is so important. You got to understand that. In the state of Virginia, you say, "Oh, well, what goes on in Virginia doesn't mean anything in Madison." The state of Virginia lost governorship in blue state because of just how you think. Oh, the voting don't mean
No, that's
nothing.
not why they lost. That is not why they lost.
Why
But
did they lose?
so let me make a point that you made about New York, right? That's
Now,
the
if you're
perfect
going to
example.
challenge me, hold up. You're going to
No,
challenge
no, I
me
don't
if
want
the
to
vote
challenge you. I just
is
want to
not there and it didn't run away. Tell me why it's not.
what?
Why did the state of Virginia turn red?
Personally, what I think.
No, not personally. Deal with the facts. The facts is out there. The votes is out
Well,
there,
but
and
you
the
asked me why.
politician platform is out there. You
You
challenged me, and you said
no,
no.
I'm not challenging you. I'm not challenging you. But this is what I'm going to say about why. Because the culture war, the Democrats are losing. The Democrats are losing the culture war. Virginia been able to turn it against, parental rights and critical race theory and things like that. And the Democrats just don't do well. Democrats is not doing well handling those type of subjects because they think most people should know better when and they don't address them as well as like Republicans who have turned it into a culture war. For one, we talk about critical race theory. There's no school K through 12 that teaches critical race theory. None. But the Republicans have been able to make this an issue that people are dealing with, which nobody is dealing with. Most people can't even tell you what critical race theory is, let alone their kids are not even learning it, but they believe like the Republicans have convinced them that their kids are learning critical race theory. Critical race theory is something they learn in law school. Nothing to do with, but they have been able to use that as a weaponized culture issues. Cal R is another one. They weaponize like cultural issues, and Democrats just haven't been able to fight against that. And the Democrats' messaging is horrible. They don't know how to get out good messaging. They don't know how to talk to the local people. They don't know how to. They just have bad messaging.
There are many variables to critical race theory, and contrary to what you said is not being taught in school, it is being taught in school. There are many variables to critical race theory. Critical race theory deals with the law of race as it pertains to class, economics, law, etc. For example, Brown versus the Board of Education was a situation and a law that was part of critical race theory. So don't get caught up in the talking points of what you hear and say, oh, they're not teaching critical race theory, because what you're saying is, just like the Republicans and other conservatives, it's okay to take critical race theory out of education. Brown versus Board of Education was used in the 70s when you had scholars come together, specifically at Harvard, to come up with different things that pertains to critical race theory. Now, I can deal with the argument that you could use more advanced law type situations in cases that deal with race and law. Uh, uh, what is it? Virginia versus the interracial situation, but critical race theories and variables of critical race theories has always been taught in our schools. And when you take that out, then you're taking out facts of history. Okay, you'll never.
Okay, I guess I'm not really. Are you considering black? Are you considering Black history critical race theory?
Yes.
Okay.
What happened when it pertains to the law? And I gave you an example. I give you another. Plessy versus Ferguson, that deals with race, that deals with law. Are you a black man, and are you able to represent as a human being in America? Plessy versus Ferguson, I think in 1896. That was a critical race problem that dealt with law, that was taught. And if you take that out, because of what Condoleezza Rice said probably about a month and a half ago on The View, oh, we're making white students feel bad about themselves. What? We're talking about law. We're talking about education. We're talking about facts in history. You would never see anyone from other communities say, oh, let's not talk about the Holocaust because we're making some people in America feel bad about that. You'd never hear that. And that'll never happen. We're talking about facts that happened in Jim Crow, which dealt with law, toll taxes and everything, poll taxes, and everything else that dealt with law that are variables of critical race theory. Okay. The Democrats, to your point, are losing the conversation and the narrative of how to defend that, because they're making it as if someone is teaching that white kids or white people are mean or bad. That's not the point. And no one is saying that because it's so untrue. What it's saying is there was law that was used to suppress a certain class of people in our country, and that's part of critical race theory. And you can look it up. If you were to look up Professor Derek Albert Bell, who was a professor at Harvard, who taught it, part of the law and everything else that dealt with law. He got together with other scholars. He was at Harvard, and Harvard said, no, you would not do that here. He left Harvard, and I think he went to University of Oregon and continued to teach from there until he died.
Okay, and you explained yourself so well that I'm just going to leave it at that. I think you explained yourself and your side very, very well on that one. So,
what about Urban Meyer in the sports there?
Yes, I was just about to say. So, Urban Meyer, right? Like, I think one interesting thing. I think Aaron Rodgers said it, and I was listening to him, and he was asked about something, and he said, well, the biggest difference, and of course you can take this tongue in cheek, but I actually think it's true. He said the biggest difference between coaching in pros and coaching in college that coaches have, like, the adjustment shows how big the adjustment is that when you're in college, they call you coach such and such, yet when you're in pro, they call you by your first name. So to me, that's saying, like, wow, you're in college, you're looked at as an authority figure, as in when you're in pro, you're looked at as a coworker almost. Versus, and I think it's so hard for college coaches to go from college to pro. I mean, we see some great college coaches who just couldn't cut it in the pro. What do you think about Urban Meyer getting fired? I think you probably believe, if I'm guessing in my GD voice, he should have never been hired in the first place. When he first hired the Iowa dude, it should have been over. But anyway, I can't do GD better than GD. So what do you think about Urban Meyer being hired all the way through his firing? But before you get started, hey, he was getting it in Ohio, so he had fun. He had fun in the bar. If you're gonna go to a bar, you might as well have fun and go all out. Just so happened it was a video camera, but hey, he was getting it in. Anyway, what do you think about Urban?
Well, you definitely know GD, because I am not a big fan and never have been a big fan of college coaches with limited NFL experience going from the college to the NFL or the NBA. You can look at Brian Kelly, Chip Kelly. You can look at Nick Saban. You can look at Floyd with the Bulls. Even I'm not a big fan of Billy. And I think little Billy is going to eventually. And I even said Brad Stevens with Boston Celtics, because
but he was good. He did well.
Huh?
Brad Stevens was an exception.
He was not an exception. He couldn't deal with Kyrie Irving, and he could not get the
respect. Nobody can deal with Kyrie Irving.
He could not get the respect of the veteran players, and that's the biggest transition, of getting the respect of the veteran players and understanding the culture in the NFL or the NBA. Okay? So just because you were the man in Ohio State there, you're not the man here. He tried to come there and treat them like kids in college. They're grown men and they're professionals. You can't do that. And that's the biggest problem that I have with limited experience. The other guy from that coached at Baylor, that was I think he's with Carolina Panthers. He's next to go. Okay? These guys have no clue and they have no respect. So, and then to add to it, Myers was arrogant. Okay?
Very arrogant.
He did a very bad job when you try to hire one coach that had a history with racial problems. And Myers basically said, yeah, I hired him. What y'all going to do about it? I mean, in so many words. And I'm like, how arrogant can you be? So I was never a fan of Myers. He should have just stayed back in the collegiate level. And hopefully they never hire another college guy at Jacksonville again. I mean,
So, do you think Urban Meyer was a great college coach, or he just had great jobs?
I think he was a great college coach. He knew how to recruit. Well, I won't say adjective. He just knew how to recruit. He did a lot of great things down. Well, I'm using great. He did good things down there in Florida, because he knew how to recruit, and he was very good at recruiting. I give him credit for that. You have to give him credit for recruiting, and he came up to Ohio State and did the same thing. But to your point, a different environment, a different culture. You have more control of college kids vice grown men who are professionals that make more money than you most of the time, sometimes, that have more authority over you indirectly. I mean, if Lawrence were to go to the owner and say, hey, this dude, he got to go. Even at the college level nowadays, it's getting to that point. But yeah. Never was a fan of Meyer. I'm glad he's gone. I think Carolina Panthers coach is next. And hopefully Nagy is next. And hopefully we can finally get in Chicago Josh McDaniels or Brian Leftwich or Todd Bowles out of Tampa.
So one other name I'm gonna throw at you and see what you think. Like, to me, if the Bears don't hire Josh McDaniel, and what do you think about Eric Bieniemy?
No.
No?
No.
Coaching under Andy Reid, you don't think he was ready?
He's another Nagy. They came under the same system. I mean, flip a coin. If you watch Kansas City and all the little trick plays that they run, that's the same stuff Nagy does. You know, you on the 2-yard line, you run a trick play, Nagy. Okay, this guy is a arena football trick calling player. It drives me crazy.
You call arena football?
Yeah, Nagy came through the arena football system, and he called all those trick plays. And same thing with Kansas City. Let them call. They can call your phone all they want to, cash and all the rest of them. Call the phone.
All right, we're going to take another call. Hey, you're a straight conversation with Jesse and GD. Who are we talking to?
Cash Crenshaw.
Cash, what's up, Cash?
Hey, are you accepting Shannon Washington trying to call in and talk to GD?
He hasn't called in yet. I sent him the number.
Yeah, so did I. I gave the number. He ain't called in yet?
Nah, hey, anybody can call. You just called again.
You going to accept my guy. It's kind of special.
No, I don't have your number locked. I mean, he just have to dial the number like a regular phone call. Hey, Shannon, if you're listening, you got to dial it like a regular number.
If Cass can call on the flip phone, Shannon can call on the regular phone.
Yeah, hey, you call this, tell him he just called like a regular number, or he click the link, one or the other.
I told him that, so be expecting his call. Hey, Jesse.
Yeah.
You're discussing the college coaches. You know GD don't believe no college coach is qualified to go to the pro.
Yeah, I don't know.
That is why you ask him that question. He has to say, you know, every college coach that comes to a pro, basketball or football.
He called him college coach last name.
He will not get your approval of GD. That's just
Nope.
the way he is.
Nope.
I don't care how good they record be or how well they do.
Because I think Brad Stevens did a great job. He went to the finals, the Eastern Conference Finals, like twice with average teams.
You see the doubt that they have about Billy Donovan. He have a doubt about I'm gonna see how they play out. See, because he's not convinced. Everybody they can't go. The college coaches got to stay college. You heard it. He had some valid points because Nick Saban do good in Miami.
He got a point. He got a point.
Yeah, so
but
he got a point, but he hasn't changed his stance.
Ever.
He's from the concrete jungle, so therefore it's kind of hard for him
to change his mind.
He always changes, man.
If I was from if I was from Memphis, Tennessee, I probably would be able to change a little bit.
Well, you would understand the southern hospitality of Memphis. Memphis way out of your league. You would understand.
I would understand the pink cowboy boots of Memphis, Tennessee.
You're in Chocolate City, and be happy in Chocolate City because you couldn't have Memphis. They have too much southern hospitality. They have too much southern of being nice to people and not being rude. Okay, Jesse. So expect Shannon to call you.
All right, have him call us, man. He got the number. He just dialed it like a regular telephone number.
It's not that hard.
So y'all don't know though. Hey, Cash and GD, they know it. They cool. They know each other. They relate. I like the balance between them both. But he's right. GD, once GD stick his paws into sing his paws into a stance, he's not changing it. But I can't really complain because I'm the same way. I'm just as stubborn. Cash just as stubborn. We all stubborn about our thoughts. But
let me get you on this, Jesse. So I can get Shannon to call with this HBCU stuff. Is that Shannon calling?
That might be, let me see if that's who. Hey, you're with Jesse and GD. Who we talking to?
This is Shannon.
Hey, what's up, Shannon? You figured it out. Hey, GD said if Cash can call on the flip phone, you can figure out how to call.
There you go. And I appreciate it.
Hey, welcome to Straight Conversation, man. Hey, anybody that want to call, when you want to call, you just dial the number like a straight telephone number. Unless you're going to come in and do the video thing, but there's a lot of setup with that.
Right. So what I would suggest you do, is during the process of your great show that you have, you spit the number out there to us sometime because I couldn't see it.
Oh, okay.
So I couldn't see it.
Hey, that's a good suggestion. I appreciate that because I always assume most people are looking at it instead of listening to it. So that's a good point. Usually I spit out the number, but I got caught up in conversation. But yeah, hey, that's a good point. And the number is 608-957-8724. 608-957-8724. So what's on your mind, Shannon?
Well, I understand you being caught up, because you got a wizard over there that you're talking to today, and I'm glad that you guys are having a very highly intellectual conversation. That's one of the things that draw me to it. But you all got into sports, I'm a fan of sports.
You can go backwards. Because you missed when we was talking about a topic.
Okay. We struggling with the Bears. I've been asking them. We finally got a black quarterback in. But Jesse, I did have one question. Do you travel in? Do you go to any venues outside of Madison?
Well, I mean, outside of Chicago, outside of Minnesota, I've been to Atlanta, but no, usually I do a lot of Midwest stuff. I have been to the South quite a bit, but I don't really like going to the South.
So that brings me back to the effect when we talked about Georgia, the voting rights there, and that was me that asked the question about
right.
Being a black male or a black person in America. Things that happen in different states affect us, period, whether we live there or not. So I was surprised.
I agree with that.
I was surprised to hear you kind of give because you live in a certain area, you have a different mindset, which is okay.
No, okay.
We're still watching our brothers and sisters from around the United States, and if they're affected in Georgia, I feel like the voting rights that possibly can affect what's going on in Georgia, we will feel it. We may feel it as we go to visit.
And to that point, I agree 100%. I think. Okay.
Well, I guess I can hang up now.
Wait! Before you go, and let me try to explain what I was trying to say because I might have been misunderstood. Like as black people, we do share a lot of the same issues, a lot of the same thing, a lot of the same problems. Like what impacts you is going to impact me, no matter where we're at. What I was trying to say is that depending on your area, there's going to be certain issues that impact you locally and in a state that may be higher up on your ladder that's higher up on my ladder. So that's because I live in a different state and I got different issues going on in my state where it might consume more of my focus. So for example, if you live in a community, say you live in a community that's affluent, and the average salary is $100,000 a year. You're not thinking about the same social economic issues that is primarily on my list if I live in a community that the average income is $30,000 a year. I'm not saying that you don't care or these issues don't impact you. What I'm saying is that's not high up, or like that is not one of the things that you're focused on as a primary issue that's impacting you today. Your primary issue may be the economy. Your primary issue may be stock. Your primary issue may be your retirement fund. Like those things may be your primary issue versus in my community, my primary issue may be I need to help people who get their lights turned out in the middle of the month, where that's not something that's on your mind. That's not something where a person living in an affluent community is like primarily thinking about day in, day out. In my community, I have to think about day in, day out, kids stealing cars, kids not going to school, like kids that won't have college opportunities, kids where they may not have a meal when they leave school. So I'm fighting issues of like keeping free lunch in school. I got to fight issues where, kids should be able to have free breakfast because in our community, if they don't eat breakfast at school, they're going to go without breakfast. If they don't eat lunch, they're going to go without dinner. But if you're living in a different community and you're black, like those are not issues that you're dealing with or concerned about because in your community, all kids are eating 3 meals a day. Kids are eating whatever they want. Like, so I'm not saying these issues don't impact you. I'm saying depending on where you're at, some things may rise higher. And what's your main concern today? Then, depending on another area of the country that has different social economic backgrounds than you do in your community. In my community, I live like in a poor, low income community. It's different than people who live in a middle class community or who live in a high end community. In my community, our football team, if we don't get donations, if we don't get people like money from the city or scholarships, then we just won't have a football team. Versus other communities around our city, they have football class, they have parents that donate $50,000 a year. All I'm saying is like, what impact me today immediately may not be the same thing that you're like, that's my number one concern. That's all I'm saying.
And a lot of our communities are alike across the country. We're more alike than we are different.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
I mean, we in all, in most even affluent Black communities have had issues with racial profiling.
Yes.
So certain things just do not, it's been part of our DNA. So
I 100% agree.
We just have to, respectfully, regardless of where we at, and hey, we don't control media. So when we cut on TV, most of the time it's something negative that's going on, and with us or with our people in some community across the world. So that's why, getting back to, I think it all started when we was talking about the Voting Rights Act.
Right.
That is something that, is being pushed. We got to have a national Voting Rights Act just to protect democracy in Georgia.
I agree.
So
I agree.
So what's happening and what Republicans have been great at is messaging. They stick together regardless of it's right or wrong. And so what is happening is once something like that is done and being successful in Georgia, guess what? It's coming to Wisconsin next, brother.
I agree.
It's coming. It's going to keep going.
Well, I'm not sure that it's going to go to all the communities, but I do understand your overall point, and I agree with your overall point. I do agree with it. But what I'm saying, another thing, so for example, voting rights. Voting rights in Georgia, I have spoken many times about the impact of voting rights in Georgia on my social media page, because I do understand that what happens in Georgia also impacts me living in the United States. I do understand. I mean, I also spoke about, about the abortion rulings in Texas, because I know overall that impacts us all. So I totally agree with what you said, Shannon. Like, there's no, like I say, I don't disagree with anything you said. Like, I totally agree. And I'm on board with everything you said.
Right. So I'm looking at your face. You look like you're screaming. You got something to say. Something like that. And Mr. G, we're gonna talk about this new nickname that's been carried. I've been knowing you for a while. I don't recall calling you G where we came from.
No, that's the only thing I call him. I mean, I'm the only person that call him that. I'm the only person that call him that I know of.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't know anybody else that call him that. I call him that because I just always have.
Is he on mute? Can you talk?
Hey, you there, GD?
I'm here.
Yeah, we just listening to you.
All right. Well, I appreciate that.
But I do agree with both of you guys. I agree 100% with both of you guys. So
I reluctantly agree with Shannon. And what Shannon is saying is true. You say free lunch program impacts me, low income. Okay, brother. Free lunch program is funded through Title I, which is a federal funding for low income folk. I used to be in free lunch program back at Bryn Mawr High School elementary school, Michelle Obama, and this is a federal funding that impacts the entire country, and it impacts school boards, and school boards are voted on. So voting and all these things, contrary to what you say, Jesse Evans, is so important. And regardless of you trying to throw the income level in there, it's more of class and
I agree with that. That's
Then
my
it's
point.
economics. Regardless of how much money you have, you still in the same class, which is Black
I
America,
disagree with that. I
white
disagree with that
America,
100%.
huh?
I disagree with that. See, my point is getting construed because, for one, as I said, I understand voting. I understand all these things impact us all. But here's a perfect example. I use my personal situation, right? So in my community, I live in a very low income community in Madison, right? My kids pay uh, forever. They always pay for lunch. They always had to pay for lunch. Now, most kids in our community don't don't have to like get free lunch. Now, the government and the state been trying to mess with free lunch programs and things like that. So during the summer, they had to decide whether kids can go to school and just eat lunch, right? Like that is one of the programs that Madison offered. So you could go to the school and eat lunch if you need to, right? If they cut this program out, it's going to have such a huge impact on certain people in my community than it would have on my kids. So this is not one of the very top priorities for me living in this community. I do overall want this program to continue because I think all kids should be able to eat free. But if it does not stop, it's not going to impact me the same way it impacts other people who this is where the kids' primary meal comes from. I'm not saying that we have different like the issues don't bother me. What I'm saying is it's going to have a different impact. You're going to have a different pound of flesh in it if it directly impacts you directly versus me, who I just want the program to continue. But if it stops, I'm not going to lose any sleep because my kids pay for lunch anyway. But for some people, this is like life or death because some people, kids do not eat at home. So what I'm saying is the importance of this issue outweighs some of the things that I care about to people like that than this issue is to me. All I'm saying is we're not monolithic where everybody is impacted the same level, the same way. That's all I'm saying.
That goes. I'm gonna say this, and I get to Shannon. And
Shannon hung up.
Okay, so you are reconfirming and double downing on what I just suspected. You said same thing about what happens in Georgia as far as voting rights, and it doesn't impact Madison.
I did not say it didn't impact. I said it's not the highest on my list.
It's not on the highest on your list. What happens in Georgia? It's way down at the bottom. What happens with the free lunch program? The free lunch program is way down on the bottom.
I did not say it was down at the bottom. I said in my community it's a bigger deal.
Well, I mean, you can clean it up and make it look pretty, but you know, a lipstick on a pig is still a pig.
Okay,
what you're saying is if it's not your priority, it really doesn't matter. That's I
did not say that one time, dude. I did not say that. I said if it's not, all I'm saying is issues, regardless of whatever issue you come up with, does not have the same impact on every black person as it does like every issue that comes up. You can't say, hey, this is the most important issue that impacts you today, because it's not depending on where they live.
And I will say this, that is one of the reasons why the Democrats are losing politically. No. That is one of the reasons why voting rights is getting taken away away in certain states. That is why critical race theory has been taken out of most of the books, because most folks thinking like you, oh, that's not on my priority. That's not impacting me. I'm all good.
That is not how
I pay for lunch for my kids and I'm good to go.
No, what I'm saying is you want black people to be monolithic and think alike. What
I want black people to understand, regardless of economics, because you threw in economics.
You can't say regardless of economics because it matters.
You threw in economics, you know.
Class matters.
You threw in economics. If you make $100,000 and you make this much, you still a black man or black woman in America, regardless of your economic level. And that's how you looked at it in society through my experience.
Okay, and I disagree with that. I get it.
And so I'm telling you through my experience, I'm not going to say how much I make or what I do. All I'm going to say is you're still looked at by class or your race before you look at your economics. And if you see the superstars, the entertainers, the celebrities, they all say the same thing. So going back to my original point, where I think what Shannon was alluding to, regardless of what state you're in, if you're a black man or black woman, you're going to be impacted by some way, somehow, or what happens throughout the different states and different cities in our countries when it comes to black folk. We're about the only people, black people, that guess what?
No, we're not. Why do you think
The
that?
Asian community will stick together, and
No, they don't.
They will come up with a bill that you can't even look at an Asian person without it being a.
I disagree with that.
They just came up with a bill. I mean,
so you think all Latinos think alike and want the same thing? You think all Asians think alike and want the same thing? You think all black people think alike and want the same thing? You think all white people think alike and want the same thing? All Jewish people? I guess.
I don't believe in generalizations. I mean, yes.
That's what you're telling me. Is like, Jesse, you have to feel this way because you're a black man.
Didn't say
like,
that. Did not say that. I'm
saying we know issues impact everybody in America, regardless of where you at, who you are, what you do. We do understand issues. There's universal issues that impact me and you, no matter where we're at. I agree with that, but I'm also saying that there's a list. There's also a list of priorities on issues where you're more conscious about at the time versus what I'm more conscious about acting on. That's all I'm saying. Like, I cannot pretend that people in California is going to all of a sudden worry about losing their voting rights, as in people in Georgia are concerned about losing their voting rights. It is a real thing for people in Georgia because tomorrow they can look up and the legislative could be repealing their votes. Black people in California is not focused on losing their voting rights. They have other issues to worry about. They have other issues that impact them as black people, but that's not something that they're over there talking about. They're not writing to their legislators about, hey, how are you guys going to take our voting rights? Are you guys going to do this? It's not, to me, they have more issues that's higher up on that food chain that's impacting them in California than what's impacting people in Georgia. That's all I'm saying. Like black people, black women in California is not worried about not being able to find a place to give an abortion. Versus black women in Texas is probably worried about where they're going to get an abortion at. That's all I'm saying. The issue impacts everybody.
Let me respond to this because you're saying what black women feels like on abortion, whatever.
How did I say what they feel like on abortion?
What did you say?
I said, if you want an abortion in California as a black woman, you're not worried about where you're going to have an abortion at. If you want an abortion as a black woman in Texas, you now have to figure out what state you have to go to, how you're going to take a, like, it's a whole different ball game because of where they're located at.
So let me say this, Jesse. Eventually, because the case of Texas is at the Supreme Court, is going to impact everybody. And you got to understand the
how does it impact everybody?
Jesse, if you allow me to complete my thought, because you locked in on a point, you say two states, California and Texas.
Okay.
But the case of Texas is at the Supreme Court that will impact the state of California, the state of Wisconsin, all 50 states and territories and the District of Columbia. You say the voting in California and the voting rights in Georgia, guess what? The way the governor of the state of California won his position through a referendum was because of voting. If people did not get out and vote during the referendum, he would have been voted out of the state of California. So even though it was not the same of Georgia when it came to voting, overall, it was about voting, and voting saved that governor of the state of California. So when you use these sporadic examples,
I'm not using a sporadic term. All I'm saying is the top of people mind, top of black women mind in California that want an abortion is not the same panic that it is in black women in Texas. So to try to make it like they thinking the same on abortion right now is not fair.
Because
Because at this
the
point, they're in
panic
two
is
different.
about Roe versus Wade. That's the panic right now, Jesse.
The worst case scenario is they're going to kick it back down to the states and let states choose.
That's
And
not the
that
worst
means,
case. That's not the worst case scenario. Have you been studying what's been
yes,
going
I
on with
have.
this?
And what they're thinking about is letting states choose uh, how to deal with abortion. And if the states choose, California is still going to allow abortions. Texas will not. Half the South will not allow abortions. But hey, man, you think I'm saying that what happens in Georgia don't impact me? I am not saying that at all. I agree. What happens in around the country impacts me. I already agree with that. But what I'm saying is, me in Georgia, they're probably up in arms about losing the right to vote. In Wisconsin, is not the top thing on my list that I'm thinking about losing my right to vote. For one, even if they change the rules in Wisconsin, I still will be able to vote. There's no way they can stop me from voting. So I'm
Jesse,
not
if it
worried about
weren't for
losing
the
my right to vote.
voting impacted Wisconsin, if it weren't for the recount, Scott would still be sitting there. You got to understand the power of the vote, man.
I am not worried about losing my right to vote.
I didn't say
So,
Jesse. I said the
yeah,
state of Wisconsin.
So voting
If it
rights,
wasn't for a recount,
is
Scott
not the
would
number.
still be the governor.
Okay. All right. I think we're talking past each other on this topic now, but I do think we understand each other. I think we understand each other's point, and I think we kind of like in the same ballpark. I think again, it's just one of those things we just talking past each other and missing the other person's point.
What do you
So
think about Deion Sanders and
I was just about to say, hey, the fact that Deion Sanders was able to steal a number 2 prospect, what do you think? Yeah, that's big, but it also talks about how nationalized, like football and like, that you can get attention going to different schools. You don't have to go to one of the 5 schools to be known, to be seen, to be on TV and things like that. Or do you think Deion Sanders is just Deion and he's just great and stole the kid away?
well, a lot to be told. I think Deion, first and foremost, and is doing good things for HBCU. He is bringing attention to HBCU, and I'm glad about that. It's unfortunate that it took a Deion to come there to bring that type of attention, because a lot of success of colleges when it comes to sports as well as academics, through my experience, is the alumni themselves. Okay, it doesn't, it takes the alumni to come back, to give back through endowments and things of that nature, to bring attention to their programs. And so I'm glad for Deion. I'm not sure that I would have picked Jackson State if I was number 2 kid in the nation. And I say that with respect, because when it comes to collegiate football, and you got the transfer portal, and you have monies to be paid out for these kids nowadays, it's all about the lights, camera, and attention. So if I had the opportunity to play at University of Alabama, University of Michigan, 110,000 people, or do I play in front of 60,000 people in Jackson, Mississippi? Okay. Do I play on ESPN2 and play in the SWAC championship, or do I play in the Cotton Bowl, or do I play in the national championship on national TV? I know we got Shannon calling probably, but I can tell you where I'm going.
I will let him in. This is Jesse and GD again. What's going on?
He's correct. This is Shannon calling. I'm listening to him. What y'all on the subject that's dead in my heart. So I said I'll chime in being an HBCU alum. And from the HBCU perspective, we are thankful for what Prime has done, as Jimmy has said, shine the light on HBCUs. Now, I disagree. I think he was saying unfortunately, it took a person like Prime to come. I'm glad Prime chose us, and I'm glad to see that other black players that made it through a system that only allowed them to be great players and not lead teams as much chose to come back and his help us build, because we know. I mean, you look at the NFL, you look at most athletics that we play basketball. It's us. We're the majority of the labor. I'll put it like that. Because I had been talking about college coaches should be getting paid a long time ago. So they found a way to finally compensate them. So I'm grateful for that. But the impact that Dion is having on all HBCUs, not Jackson State, and Jackson State actually has a great program. It's amazing what it takes a person that don't need money and fame and already has it, what he's been able to come and do to build what Jackson State currently has now and still building. So as far as the kid choosing Jackson State, I had always said it's going to take someone that's willing, that's not scared, that's not willing to sacrifice, that's not have the pressure to make his family rich, instantaneously. But then again, there's a still great possibility that all of that is going to come because he has the talent. If Prime choose to stay there, because it's been rumors about just because, of course, the big schools all of a sudden want Prime because he's a threat to them. So we got to try to offer him all the money in the world. So looking at one of his interviews just the other day, he said if he go to a big school right now, that the money that they're offering him don't impact him now because he's okay. He's in a good position. So those that have made it and what Prime is doing is great. And I think we all going to benefit from it. I think kids, well, I ain't going to call them kids, young athletes are waking up to this opportunity. Yes, HBCUs are behind because we've been left out the money yet. The alumni, we've been left out, they talk about what the alumni do. Well, you got bigger schools. You have schools that are already connected corporately. So we have, people graduating from these schools and giving back. So yeah, it's much bigger money. But there's a lot of media money out here now. There's a lot of exposure for these kids now. So eventually the money will fall. I had said in a comment, and I'll be done with this, if the money was even across the board, to me, Nick Saban and the University of Alabama would be no better than any other team because it'd be fair game. But me being at a school from Alabama, I was there when a politician who happened to be a graduate of Alabama State had to sue the state of Alabama just trying to get some fair compensation back toward both of all the HBCUs in the state of Alabama. So yeah, it's some unfairness, but we're moving, we're progressing, we're moving forward, and nothing but great things coming.
All right, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I like that word, progressing. JD. Hey, thanks, Shannon.
All right. I'm hanging up and listening. Don't make me call back in.
All right, appreciate it. Appreciate it.
I will say this. I appreciate what Dion is doing, but I will still say that it's about attention. It's about the best programs in the country. And I say that because, it's so funny. We all Dion. But if you rewind and flip back the hands of time, Dion went to Florida State. He did not go to HBCU because Dion was all about the flame, the glory, the lights and camera. If you seen Dion from Florida State all the way to Atlanta Falcons, that's all he was about. was the lights, the camera. He wasn't thinking about no HBCU. So it sounds good now that he's more mature and everything, but back
Yes, he is
then he wasn't.
mature.
And when it's just a matter of time before the lane, the money, the lights, the camera get Dion again, and he be gone again. So there's nothing wrong with playing in front of 100,000 people at the best program in the country that will almost guarantee you first round, second round in first round in the NFL. Okay, you got to deal with the pros and the cons. It wasn't to the early 1970s when blacks were allowed to play with these schools. Okay. So there has to be accountability across the board. Are there some crooked things that the NCAA does? Yes. It's a big $1 billion industry. But there also has to be accountability with the HBCUs of what they're doing. You look at the endowments. The College of Women and Marriage is only about 6,000 people, but their endowment triples most of, if not all of, the HBCU schools because most of the alumni don't even give back or are not active. There have been many NFL players that came from HBCUs. How many chose to come back other than Doug Williams and a couple others? Okay. Doug Williams came back. Why wasn't the attention there? Why didn't people come back? So, there has to be accountability on both sides. I'm glad to see HBCU schools are doing well, and hopefully they do better. Howard University, right up the street here in D.C., they stadium look like a high school football stadium. Why? Why is that? You got celebrities. The Vice President of the United States graduated from Howard University, and they have a Ragley High School type stadium. You go to Hampton University, Dr. Harvey at Hampton University got a professional looking stadium. So if I'm
There's
at,
high schools in Texas that got professional stadiums.
yes. So if I'm at a 4-star player, number 2 in the country, and go down there to Howard University at a high school stadium with leaking, they just had a protest at Howard University. Students had to protest because they had no heat. Why? Because the alumni in their organization wouldn't put no resources into schools. And you got all the endowments that should be coming from all these celebrities went to the school. So there has to be accountability also for the Black alumni that go to HBCUs. Do they give back? Are they active in giving back to their universities? Or is it all about going back and barbecuing and going to the bands?
See, and I think that goes back to, and again, I think that goes back to what I was saying, where I was saying people have different concerns. Some people just don't care. I mean, like people have different agendas. Whether they black or not, it's just not a big deal to them. Whereas somebody like Dion or Doug Williams, it was a big deal to. There's a lot of other celebrities that it's just not something they think about. But again, man, hey, we gonna get ready to wrap it up, man. It's been a long, great conversation. I'm gonna give you the last thoughts on our talk, and hey, we got to do this again soon, man. The sooner the better. But I'm gonna give you the last chance to wrap up. Anything you want to comment on? Anything you want to talk about? Anything you want to mention? This is your. I'm gonna let you get the last words in.
Well, I appreciate it. First of all, I want to thank you, Jesse, for giving me the opportunity to be on your show. I appreciate the callers that called in, Cash Crenshaw and Shannon. Very good comments that they added to it. I appreciate the topics. And I would like to end with this for your listeners out there that as we move forward in our country, a lot is going on. And the big things that I'm seeing is vaccinations, immigration, and when it comes to education, critical race theory. So I would love to see, the different political parties really get it together when it comes to this, because these are the issues that's impacting our country, to include, Roe versus Wade with this abortion and this critical race theory, as well as the vaccination. So, and immigration. So we got a lot going on. I'm not a big fan of this pathway citizenship with immigration with the Democrats. I'm not a big fan of a lot of this stuff, but school shooting a lot. We got a lot going on. So hopefully we as a country all can get through this pandemic, and hopefully vaccination will help most of our country, and we can get back to, being one as a country. And because we are definitely torn apart as a country with all the politics, with all the killings and everything. So those are my thoughts. So it should be an interesting political year coming up next year. Even in our city, Jesse, with the politics there, a lot of big decisions that could change our country and impact our country forever. But on a good note, I hope our Bears do better. I hope we fire Nagy.
Your Bears, man. I'm with New England.
Excuse me?
I said your Bears. I'm with New England.
Yeah. And then to your point about first name, whoever said that, I dare someone call Bill, because he is the greatest coach in the NFL. You would never call Bill or Mike Tomlin Mike. It's all about.
It was Aaron Rodgers who said it. So I mean, I think he carried a lot of weight.
I'm not a big fan of him. He misled people on the vaccination, and that's a whole different topic. And so he probably called his coaches that by first name, but you would not call Bill or Mike Tomlin Mike. I dare you, So, but thank you again, Jesse. I had a blast. You're a good man. I appreciate what you're doing. You're doing good things in your community. I know that. I would never challenge what you do in your community. You've been doing it for many years. I don't know if your listeners know that you have volunteered for many, many years, from a sports level to everything of giving back to your community. So I appreciate what you do. Continue to do good work. Happy holidays to you and your family. And thank you again.
Hey, and I appreciate it, man. And I second everything you said about everything you said. We always go have good conversations. We always go have spirited conversations. And it was fun. And that's the key thing is like, as long as when you having these talks, you can have fun with it. And 2 hours went by fast. I even
It did.
So, and we have a lot of things on the table that we probably wanted to talk about that we didn't even get a chance to talk about.
We didn't get a chance.
Hey, this is what I'm going to say to you, man. Start looking at your schedule. I know it's the holidays coming up, so I might not get you again before the holiday, but hey, start looking at your schedule, and you're welcome to come on anytime, any day, and we just start chopping it up again.
I will more than likely. I will be ready, and hopefully one day we can probably even get Cash Crenshaw if he can connect that cell phone, flip phone, and get Shannon on here. We get all four on here, and we can really chop it up as well. So I would love that.
And me too. Straight conversation. I wanted to be for all of us to come on. Anybody that's listening, anybody that want to hear themselves talk, anybody that want to chime in, I encourage anybody who want to set up a show with me, or me and GD, or me, like anybody, however you want to set it up. Like I say, we have an open group. I want people to participate because everybody should hear how other people think, and I'm really a big proponent.
And I appreciate.
I'm really a big proponent of like listening to other people and hearing them out, and knowing why they think different than you, and understanding that people are going to think different, but it doesn't mean it has to be like hostile, as you said. In this country, we got so hostile with everything that, it's good. Like I say, me and you come from different thought processes, and we can sit down and have a 2-hour conversation and, hey, still have fun with it, and have other people call in. But
we'll still have fun. We'll still have shrimp fried rice and everything else,
Oh, yeah. So we're going to wrap it up, man, and we appreciate you guys listening in, and looking forward to bringing more of this to you and getting GD back on. He asked how you got the name GD. I'm like, I'm the only one that call him GD that I know of. But
you're the only one. And, growing up on the south side of Chicago, but yeah, that's a whole different story. So yeah.
So we'll chop it up, man. I look forward to talking to you again and doing this again soon. Hey, you have happy holidays, you and your family, and hey, let's just like you say, man, let's just get back to happier times. Let's get through all the stuff we're getting through, and let's just get back to happier times where we just argue with each other and still love each other.
I agree.
All right. Hey, everybody, peace and thanks for listening.
Thank you, sir.